Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the 3 Tech Takeout. It's our Monday live show. We've got multiple Monday night football games staggered for some reason. I don't know why ESPN's doing that, but we're here to talk about college football. And man, Garrett, do we have a lot to talk about on this Monday live show. Hello, friends. Welcome in, one and all. Make sure that you join in on the chat if you have thoughts, because we have a lot to talk about. We've got realignment news. We've got surprising starts. We've got recap of late night games, and boy, was there a spicy one in Provo, Utah. And we've got some midweek previews. Garrett, if you had time to reflect on the weekend that was in college football, we can get into the big storylines in a little bit, but as you've had a little bit more time to just kind of let it marinate, what are any pressing thoughts that you just want to get out into the space?
I would say the biggest pressing thought that I have with regards to the end of the weekend, because obviously we broke everything down on the live show. Go back and check that out if you haven't yet. But I think my biggest thing that I want to get across is that, yeah, it was a spicy finish in Provo over the weekend. It was maybe not what we expected. I don't think anybody would have called BYU to just completely dominate that game, though we maybe should have, right? They did really well against a run-first quarterback at SMU, and then obviously you get a guy like Avery Johnson out there. He's run-first type quarterback, and they dominate that as well. This wasn't just like spicy. This was like Diablo sauce spicy. And there's a purposeful reference to a local, the national chain of certain burrito type stores.
If you're on college football internet at all, you
understand what's happening here. Well, and the big thing too is, obviously we saw what happened with the Knowles guy, and he backed off and his team is cursed. I gotta give the guy, I guess, some kind of prop. He's gonna do it.
Playoff confirmed.
Yeah, he's gonna do it, and I am excited. Well, I mean, maybe not excited to see that, but I guess I'm just kind of excited at the spectacle, right? You don't get to see something brand new every single day. I've never seen that, and look, I'm going to tell you, if our fans or whoever else, if they don't really want to see that, that's okay. You don't have to. You can view it through my eyes. I'll probably go and do some kind of reaction to it, and
I think we should have a simultaneous live stream where you're just commentating on it.
Yeah, I won't even cast it. I'll just have it over here on the monitor and just oh god, just kind of reacting to it. I don't know how they're going to do this without getting TOS either. I don't understand. And so look, it's one of the goofy things about college football. People do crazy things. I hope that this isn't the beginning of one of these college football traditions, that we celebrate a big loss or a loss by a certain margin with certain, objects being, whatever. But I'm not going to go into too many details. It feels wrong to talk about it that specific.
We've already lost half our audience tonight. It's okay. If you don't know what Garrett's talking about, don't Google it.
Google it. Yeah,
there's a gentleman from Manhattan, Kansas, or a fan of Kansas State that is paying off a bet that is, but literally will have to cash. So it involves Taco Bell. That's all you need to know. I'm sure it'll be on the internet.
Just look up beefy five-layer and yeah. Anyways,
and as our friends at Sideline Sports said, it is the fifth layer that'll get you.
It does get you.
Garrett, speaking of big things out west, let's talk about realignment, because that's a natural segue from beefy five-layer burrito.
Oh, yeah.
Natural segue to realignment, because, man, the Pac-12, things are getting a little dicey out west. I think they thought they had several teams kind of in the bag. They could rely on the brand, but all of a sudden today they've been told no by some high-profile potential additions. Just to recap for you, if you're like me and needed someone to summarize it for you as you finish your work day today, here's where things stand. If you recall, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, the Pac-12 announced the additions of Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State. A ton of rumors started swirling about who they would get to fill out the conference. Of course, you need 8 teams total to get auto bid status and be an official conference per NCAA and college football playoff standards. Today, it was announced that for the schools they were potentially targeting from the American, are fully committed to staying in the American. And every single American Conference team tweeted out the same graphic that they are fully committed. All 15 are going to be committed to all of that conference. So Memphis, South Florida, Tulane, UTSA, all staying in the American. Confirmed to be staying in the Mountain West now are Air Force and UNLV. Likely staying in the Mountain West are San Jose State, New Mexico, Wyoming, Nevada, and Hawaii for football only. And reported to be leaving the Mountain West in addition for the Pac-12 is Utah State. So all of that.
It's all good. Hey, it's live. It's a dog. It's what it is. It's fun. Now, looking at kind of the rest of this, so just kind of going back over real quick, Mountain West stay teams right now, Air Force, UNLV, teams that we're kind of watching to see what happens right now, San Jose State, New Mexico, Wyoming, Nevada, and Hawaii. And then Utah State, kind of the more recent one to break. That was this evening. That one kind of broke, I think that was like an hour ago or something like that. And they said that they're going to be leaving. I think that was Pete Thamel that came out with that. I saw it through a couple other sources as well. The big thing here is, and my take here was looking at it. It says if this above scenario holds, both leagues are at 7 teams, right? You're going to have both leagues, the Mountain West, and then the Pac-12, or I guess the Pac-7 at that point. I'm tired of trying to count which number they're on, but the Pac at that point will have 7 as well, and both of them will be one short, right? That'll be one spot short, and then you're just kind of left saying, what now, right? Like, what's the next thing that happens? What's the shoe to drop? And to me, this is like one of those like Westerns where you have the standoff at high noon and you got just the 2 teams and you can kind of feel like one of them's going to get that 8th spot, right? Like the West is going to find some way to, poach Oregon State somehow. Or, vice versa. They're going to, the Pac-12 is going to grab the Mountain West and they're going to say, hey, we're going to grab New Mexico just because I think we can, right? Someone is going to do that. And the interesting thing that I think from this is it's not so much one of those like really cool dramatic ones. It's more like the one that's in like, A Million Ways to Die in the West, where it's sort of just this weird scenario. And the guy that's shooting on the one side kind of sucks at shooting. And so he just nicks the guy, but he puts some poison on the bullet. And then the other guy, of course, is poisoned. So he's not going to shoot right. It's just not going to be good. It's going to be sloppy and messy, however it solves. I don't think that this solves nice and neat. I don't think that this solves in a situation where, there's a Tulane that jumps over or they grab some big package. I don't think that that's what happens here. I think what's more likely to happen is that you have this list of teams that are staying in the American. They just stay in the American, and the American kind of becomes more of the destination while those schools out west kind of sort themselves out and figure out who's going to play in what conference.
Yeah, and again, apologies for my dog going crazy. I don't know who is ringing my doorbell at 7:45 p.m. That's probably not someone I need to talk to right now. But yeah, Ross Dellinger reported today in his words, it's a race. It's a literal race to see who can convince these remaining Mountain West teams to stay or go. And the Mountain West is trying to sweeten the pot. They're offering some big time incentives with this buyout money or this exit fee money that they are going to get. And Air Force has signed a contract for $10 million. I think it was reported that UNLV signed for an undisclosed amount of these exit fees that are going to be gotten from these teams that are leaving. It's just a race to see who can convince these kind of free agents at this point to stay or go. And it's going to be really interesting to see who wins out here. The Pac-12 thought they could rely on the legacy brand, and I think that's being shown that it's not as simple as that. I, for one, am really excited. I know the American has kind of been a joke for regionality, right? But at least most of them are east of the Rockies. I think all of them are east of the Rockies at this point. I'm kind of glad that the American schools said, you know what, we're going to stick to playing in our more traditional footprint. We're not going to chase a random bag out west that may or may not pay off. So color me someone that's really impressed by that and excited that the American is staying together as it currently is. I don't know what this means for the Pac-12. Do they dip down to the FCS level, go after a Sacramento State or a Montana school or a North Dakota, South Dakota State? Do they get a couple of Mountain West teams and maybe the Mountain West poaches a UTEP or a New Mexico State? They kind of seem a more natural geographic fit than in Conference USA. I don't know. To me, that second scenario seems a little bit more likely. I think they'll be able to pry one or two more teams away from the Mountain West. What we really need to look at, I think, are Hawaii and Gonzaga. And I'll tell you why. Hawaii is a football only member of the Mountain West. There's rumors that might mean their exit fees are a little bit lower if they're able to leave, if they're even existent at all. They might be able to be exempt from exit fees, according to certain reports, because they're a football only member. So if the Pac-12 picks up Hawaii for football and then Gonzaga for basketball, it was rumored and then shot down today that Gonzaga was joining the Pac-12 for basketball and other sports. They don't have a football team, obviously.
Right.
But I think those are the two schools that you need to look at. It would kind of be a clean break for the Pac-12. They get to 8 in football and be able to have automatic qualifier status, and they get to 8 in basketball and be able to have automatic qualifier status in the NCAA tournament as well, and have a really salty little basketball league going forward, as that's, a strategy that we've seen the Big 12 employ, looking for basketball first almost in addition. So it's going to be really, really fast moving. Apparently there was a deadline of 4:30 Mountain Time today to report if you were committed to the Mountain West or not. I don't know how firm that was. I don't know what kind of leverage the Mountain West has with those schools, but
Mountain West offices are sitting there at 4:36 waiting on New Mexico to get into them.
That's what was reported. There was Ross Dellinger reported that there was a 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time deadline to say yes or no to the Mountain West. And I think we've only heard from 2 schools officially on that. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the thing for me with this is there's a lot of these teams that are saying, I think, the right things, and they're saying what they need to, obviously keep where they are, right? They're trying to keep where they are and keep good graces with their situation. But I do think a lot of this is just posturing. And at the end of the day,
we
I
saw
think
this time last year when the Pac-12 was all committed to staying, or the Pac-10 at that point was all committed to staying.
At this point, Mitch has probably tweeted out the Alliance screenshot 20 times on our Twitter. You can go check that out. But commitments are commitments. We're having a good conversation in the chat right now with it's Rocker Farm says he lives in Germany, which is pretty cool. Just wanted to go to bed, saw the tweets pop up, and now he's unable to sleep. I thought that was kind of funny. But we're talking about commitments and everything like that. He says, I'm wondering how much value the commitment from the AAC teams has. I said about as much as a high school commitment from a recruit. This is a lot of just posturing. I think that the American teams are smart to say that they're sitting down and committed, because that's going to get them a better share when they hop over to the Pac-12, when they jump ship and leave the American. Or maybe they are going to stay committed. Maybe this is sincere and they all want to stay together and play together because they think that their best bet is being in that conference and grabbing an auto bid, because maybe they don't think that the Pac-12 can grab that auto bid. Maybe they don't think that the new college football landscape is going to be conducive for the Pac-12 being one of those teams that gets in. They think they're going to be able to get that auto bid, which this year is probably right. This year, if it's not the
until Memphis crapped the bet against Navy.
Up until Memphis messed that up. Again, it might be Boise, so maybe the Mountain West is the way to go. But no, I do think that this is a situation where there's probably a lot of posturing. I think that this is just a posturing situation we find ourselves in. And the teams from the American, and probably even a lot of the teams from the Mountain West, are just saying the right things so that they can get their deal in place before jumping ship, right? The other 4 already left. Those are kind of the more desirable teams. From whatever's left over, they don't want to be the new version of what Washington State and Oregon State were. They don't want to be the ones that get left behind or get dragged along somewhere else, and they don't want to. They want to be the teams that end up on top. And I think that that's important. I think that that's a good thing for their schools to do. You kind of have to do it. It's your due diligence to make sure your school is in solid footing and you're not going to get kicked out of your own conference before you got the other ones lined up. But at the same time, I think that this is just where we have to acknowledge we are with conference realignment. It's going to be a lot of lying until people sign a contract and sign a TV deal and go play. And right now, hearsay is hearsay. Right now, a conference commitment is a conference commitment. a a post that they make online in the same format saying that they're all happy to play together is just a post online. They can say that we should respect their decision, and we might respect their decision. But they'll also ask us to respect their decision when they decommit and then commit to the other school as well. So it's that's where we are right now, I think.
I think it's also, last thing I'll say on this is I think it's also just kind of a big game of chicken, right? I think that these schools in the American, if they were to make the jump, thank you, Rocket Farm. Appreciate you. You have a great night in Germany, my friend. That's really cool that you're listening from Germany. If they were to make a big jump, I think it's different for Washington. Washington plays at Rutgers this week, right? In a conference game. That's absurd that that's a conference game. It's one thing for an athletic budget the size and a payout the size of Washington to do that for a football game and then later volleyball, basketball, you name it. For Memphis to commit to playing on a Tuesday night volleyball game or soccer game or whatever at Washington State, there's got to be a lot of incentive for that, right? There's going to be a lot of, this is clearly the right choice for us. It's just clearly not 100% the right choice for them right now. And I think that's why they're just kind of staying put, watching and making the Pac-12 prove that they are going to be the premier conference at that level and not the American. Right now, the Pac-12 just hasn't been able to prove that because they haven't been able to add the extra horses to get there.
The good news, this is probably the last thing I got on this. The good news, though, for anybody hoping and maybe trying to get into the Pac-12 at this point, good news is the Pac-12 leadership is really, really good at putting together a media rights deal. And so whoever does jump ship, they're going to be in for a lot of success and money on the other side of it when they inevitably end up on a major network for a bunch of cash and not the CW or, True TV or something like that.
Hey, CW knocked out the guys trolling that have conference games on ESPN+.
That was bananas. The little tweet they sent out with the final score, that was maybe the best thing that the CW has ever produced.
Fantastic. All right, Garrett, let's move on from realignment talk. Let's talk games on the field this year. Let's talk some surprising 4-0 teams. I've highlighted a few here. I've got 6 teams that have started 4-0 that I don't think even the most optimistic people in their respective fan bases probably thought they'd be 4-0 at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can write in and tell me you're a fan of these teams and you had it all right all along. But Illinois, Indiana, Washington State, Pitt, Duke, and BYU, all 4-0, Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 6 teams, I guess kind of free form, take it where you want. Who are you most impressed with? Which one's the most surprising, or who has the highest ceiling going forward?
I think most impressed with and best achieving, highest whatever. I think all of that falls on BYU for me. I don't think anybody expected BYU to look good at all. I certainly didn't. I didn't think that BYU was going to be a very good football team this year. I thought that unfortunately they were looking at a head coaching change at the partway point of the season or at the end of the season, and there's going to be a new era. Don't look now. They're playing really good defense. They're running the ball well. They've got their quarterback is doing really well. And by the way, one of the funniest things about the situation, he's a Jewish quarterback at BYU, and I saw that. I'm sure you saw it too. Is the BY Jew shirt that was really funny.
Yeah,
I love how much that's just taking off, and it's becoming kind of its own like cult story. And so it's really fun, and it's fun to watch this BYU team look good because this is something we haven't really seen in a while. It's been a while since BYU's been relevant sort of nationally. And I don't know that they are necessarily now anyways, but they are 4-0 and they're tied for the best record in football right now. So that's kind of fun. That's a fun situation we find ourselves in with BYU. I think they probably have the highest ceiling remaining too. I'm looking at the rest of their conference schedule. They play at Baylor. That's tough. It's not a very good Baylor football team, but it still is tough to travel and come down to Texas and travel to this part of the country. But they play Arizona at home. They play Oklahoma State at home, a couple teams that haven't proved very much. And by the way, when it comes to shutting down the run, I don't think Oklahoma State's going to have a very good time in Provo at all. They go to UCF. That might be the last big chance for a loss on their schedule. That might be the biggest chance at a loss left on their schedule because then they finish at Utah, big rivalry game there. Kansas, at Arizona State, and Houston. That's not exactly a murderer's row. Is it insane to talk about 9-3 as the floor for BYU right now with a loss to UCF, Utah, and then take your pick of one more?
Well, here's my counterpoint on BYU. They have two really, really good wins. They beat SMU. We'll talk about the K-State game here in just a little bit. I guess we can talk about BYU kind of right now, and we'll talk about what it means for K-State when we talk the game specifically here in a little bit. But really, neither one of those wins were they all that. I know the score says 31-9 against Kansas.
Right. Or 38.
38-9. Thank you. Were they really that dominant in that game, or was it more Kansas State beating themselves? With SMU, were they really this dominant force on defense, or was it SMU with multiple turnovers inside the red zone and kind of kicking that game away? Again, they won the games. Don't hear what I'm not saying. They won the games. Credit to them that. Winning, as Dan Rubenstein on the Solid Verbal says, winning is a skill. And if you don't know how to win, you're not going to win very many football games. But I got to tap the brakes a little bit on 9-3 before I see them just go out and really beat a team where that team didn't commit just a ton of egregious mistakes.
I totally understand it. I want to kind of push and say this might have more to do with BYU than you think. I went back and checked Kansas State's results so far this season. They beat UT Martin 41-6, obviously not a very competitive game. They beat Tulane 34-27, and they beat Arizona 31-7. They managed 9 points against BYU. And turnovers are part what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
They held SMU to 15 points in this matchup that they won.
That's aging very well.
Previously, obviously the 29-24 for week 0 beat the crap out of HCU. And then, offense go Burr against TCU, 66-42. That's a good SMU offense. That's an SMU offense that was top 10 last year. Didn't lose a whole lot of pieces from it, and they held them to 15 points, held them out of the end zone. That's a good team. It's a good team. It's a very good defense. I think that this is a really good team. I think this is a really good BYU team, a very good defense. I do think they might have actually scored one. I can't remember if they did or not. But this is a very good team. I think a very good defense. And I think that's where it has to start. They run the ball really well. And yeah, there is something too when you do all the little things right and then it shows up on the field, right? You do all the special teams things right, and then all of a sudden you block really well on a punt return that looks like it should be past you, and you take it to the house. You do a lot of things right on defense. You put yourself in a good position. You're going to pick it off and give your offense some short fields. And by the way, their offense converted. That's still red zone efficiency. Like, short fields are short fields, but you still convert those into touchdowns. And you have to give them a lot of credit for that. I think it's a lot better team than we're giving them credit for. I think they're top half of the Big 12 minimum. The Big 12 has not necessarily been very impressive so far. And I think they're top half of the Big 12 at a minimum. I think that they could really make a run here down the stretch. Anything can happen. Maybe they've put too much on film and they've kind of, put it all out there a little too early to get some big wins off the bat, and everything's on film now and everyone's going to know how to stop them at this point. Maybe that's true. But at this point, I really like where BYU is and where they stand.
Do you have the line pulled up for the Baylor game this week?
I do not.
I'll look that up in a second. But I want to say Baylor might have been favored for some reason.
They might be.
But
let me just keep it on the top 25 tab now that BYU.
Yeah, they are ranked. Yeah.
Baylor minus 3.5 in that game. So
I think it opened around 4.5 or 5. So I was really surprised by that when the lines came out yesterday. But I'm with you. I think the ceiling could be closer to 9-3. For me to say the floor is 9-3, got to see him beat a team without that team making a ton of mistakes before I'm really in on that. Let me tell you about Indiana and Illinois, though. Y'all have heard me talk about Indiana all offseason. I've been trying to toot the hype train a little bit for the Hoosiers.
You're preaching that Indiana gospel.
Exactly. And Illinois has really come into their own as well. We were not impressed with Luke Altmaier early, but he's really turned things around, slinging it all over the yard. He's got a fun receiver duo in Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. They're both really, really hard to cover. And Indiana, man, Curtis Rourke, talking about slinging it all over the yard. He's got like 5 or 6 receivers that he likes to spread the ball out to. And their running game is really, really fun as well. Justice Ellison averaging 7.6 yards per carry through 4 games. That's good. I don't care who you're playing.
That's good.
I know Indiana hasn't played the toughest schedule yet. Illinois definitely more battle tested with wins over Kansas and Nebraska, but both of these teams, man, a lot of fun, putting up a lot of points, getting more offensive than they have been in really recent past. Illinois has a huge test this weekend at Penn State. I think the air might come out just a little bit when they go to Happy Valley this weekend, but could be an interesting game. I've underestimated them before, and they've proven me wrong. They have some tough matchups with Michigan and Oregon down the stretch too, but after that Oregon game, might have a nice little close to the season with 4 straight winnable games. Indiana has a little bit more of a runway to keep getting better, keep improving. They have Maryland this weekend. I know you love your Terps, Garrett, but last I checked, Indiana was about a touchdown favorite.
And they probably should be.
In this game at home, Maryland has not looked their best so far this year. Not as good as advertised in the offseason. Then they're at Northwestern, at home against Nebraska.
Play on the lake, yeah.
Yeah. At home against Nebraska, at home against Washington, at Michigan State, before back-to-back games against Michigan and Ohio State, and closing out the season with the rivalry game against Purdue. So there's some potential. There's some potential to make another run. I'd love to see how high the Hoosiers can climb.
Yeah,
they can get to 6 or 7-0 going into that stretch run. Look out, man. That could be really, really exciting.
Yeah, these are a couple of really good teams. I was checking some of the stats on them just to kind of see where they're ranking right now. Indiana has the 5th ranked points per game.
Yeah.
And they have the 7th ranked opponent points per game against.
They're blowing fools out. It's not like their schedule. I'll be the first to say their schedule has not been good. I highlighted that in the preseason where they have the opportunity to win some games early, but they're blowing them out.
And they should be doing this, but they're doing what they should. And the 2 things I wanted to emphasize here are the completion percentages for these 2 quarterbacks at these schools. Curtis Rourke completing 75% of his passes, and Luke Altmaier completing 71% of his passes. That gets it done. Okay, I don't care who you are. When you can complete passes at that clip, it means you know who's supposed to be open. You make good decisions with the football. You don't try to force it down the field when you don't need to. If you're completing 70+% of your passes, that gets it done. So if these guys can keep that up, these could both be teams that push and maybe ruin a couple of seasons down the stretch. It might have already happened with Nebraska. I don't know what's going to happen, kind of with them heading on the way out. They can certainly salvage the season, but that's probably not a loss they expected coming into the year. And, we'll see what happens with them. But, yeah, Illinois and Indiana could ruin some seasons, maybe make a little bit of noise, maybe make a dark horse run. Couple of those Big Ten teams have looked a little susceptible. Only Big Ten team I don't think has looked bad so far is Ohio State, but outside of them, everyone else in the Big Ten's looked like they have had moments of weakness and had moments where they're beatable. So, yeah, these could be a couple of good teams.
All right, Garrett. Well, let's move on to – we've been teasing it enough. Let's talk about BYU demolishing Kansas State on Saturday night. This happened while we were recording the live show. We've talked a lot about BYU, so we don't necessarily need to rehash big picture BYU. But in this game, Kansas State went up 6-0, and BYU went on to score the next 31 points unanswered. It was not pretty for the Wildcats. Avery Johnson really struggled on his first big road test in conference play. I know he played at Tulane, but different animal at night in Provo. They couldn't throw the ball, plain and simple. They tried to run their way back in it, but you just can't run your way back into a big deficit. And without the downfield passing threat, it really made Kansas State's offense one-dimensional and just made them take too much time. I know middle of the third quarter, I think they took like 6 minutes just to kick a field goal and cut it to 31-9. Can't do that. Can't have that happen when you're trying to come back. And you mentioned it when we were talking about Kansas State last week, is this might come out to bite them. And it did literally a week later. So good call on that. BYU had just 241 yards of offense. It really wasn't a poor defensive effort from Kansas State. I'm not freaking out about their defense, but a lot of short fields, 3 turnovers inside their own territory for Kansas State gave BYU short fields. They got a scoop and score from the defense. They got a wild punt return touchdown.
Yeah.
Kansas State, all of a sudden, Garrett, backs way up against the wall. They have a game against Oklahoma State this weekend, and all of a sudden, the loser of that game is probably out of Big 12 title contention and thus college football playoff contention.
Yeah, and that's a game that we were all talking about being possibly a Big 12 preview for the championship game. And you're probably right. There's a good chance that whoever loses that game is done for the season when it comes to competing for the championship and competing to go to Arlington. So, really important game. And I don't envy either team's head coach right now trying to figure out how to make their offense work, because neither of those teams have looked very good on the offensive side of the ball, have looked extremely limited. You're right. You brought it up, and I don't believe in Avery Johnson's ability to throw the football. I said this in the preseason. I said that I just haven't seen him throw it yet, and we said small sample size. But I said I got to see him throw the football before I can believe Kansas State can really push to compete in the Big 12. There's just too many good teams, and there's too many teams that can score in the Big 12. And some of those teams are different than what we thought they were, but there's still some of those teams that can do that. The problem right now for me for Kansas State is, they put up some numbers against inferior opponents, but now that they ran into a good defense in BYU, the not being able to pass it really did come back to bite them. They ran for 228. Congratulations. Avery Johnson ran for 74, averaged almost 7 yards a carry. That's great. He threw for 130 on almost 50% completions. This is not very good. He threw 2 picks.
And BYU was more than okay with them running the ball in the second half because it took up way too much time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's just the problem with it too, is it's just when you're in a negative game script, you can't just run your way back into the game. You have to be able to pass the ball. You have to be able to hit chunk plays. You have to be able to stretch a defense. If you can't do that, you're not going to be able to come back on teams. So I don't know what this means for Kansas State yet. We're going to find out a lot about them against Oklahoma State. And we're going to find a lot about Oklahoma State as well that week. But I don't know where they go from here, but they have to find a way to throw the football. They have to find a way to scheme up some kind of play where receivers are open and he can hit guys, over the middle. He can hit guys in the flat. He can hit guys on, little dig routes, whatever it is. He's got to find ways to hit receivers and get the ball moving through the air, because that's where he can be effective with his legs. If he can start throwing the ball a little bit, Kansas State's offense is going to go very fast. And it's gonna start to look like what we expected them to look like. But if he can't, and if he can't figure out how to throw that football, sorry, Wildcat fans, it's probably not going to be the season you wanted.
It's a shame they didn't have any other options in their quarterback room, right?
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know if they have a quarterback or maybe had a quarterback who could throw the football a little bit. Probably had some
experience. If only they had like a 5th-year senior or something.
Something like that. A guy who could throw the football. Yeah. I'm sure that guy could only succeed if everyone was a 5-star out there, but he's not much of a quarterback anyway. There's a lot of scrubs transferring out of Kansas State as well. And the other thing about it too, and I want to obviously a little bit tongue in cheek about Will Howard there, but I also want to emphasize losing Colin Klein hurt this team and their ability to call offensive plays, their ability to scheme up interesting ideas, set up opposing defenses with different looks. It hurt this team, and they have not found an answer at their offensive coordinator spot yet. And obviously not something they expected.
And they lost a lot of offensive line talent from last year too.
Yep. And so not something they expected to happen, obviously. Tried to recover in the offseason, tried to figure it out, probably only had so many options at a certain point. It's time to just acknowledge what's probably true and say, like, you've got a quarterback who can really run it. You've got a quarterback who maybe over the course of his career will learn how to become a really good passer. It probably isn't this year.
Well said. I think that's absolutely concerning for Kansas State. At the bright side, they do have a lot of potential defenses for him to have a get-right games very, very soon.
There's some bad Big 12 teams coming up on the schedule, maybe after Oklahoma State.
We saw what Taylor Green did to Oklahoma State even in Stillwater, right? Colorado is not going to be that formidable on the defensive side of the ball. West Virginia, Kansas, Houston.
They gave up 31 to Baylor.
Yeah. So, not a lot of formidable defenses or consistent defenses at the very least coming up. Garrett, we have a couple other overlooked games we can run through real quick. Colorado, you mentioned, did give up 31 points to Baylor, but found a way to win in a miracle comeback. Hail Mary at the end of regulation. We reacted to that live on the live show.
Mm-hmm.
They stripped Dominic Richardson to the goal line. It's a nice bright spot for Colorado. Got to prove it week in and week out, but good to get a conference win. Those were really hard to come by for the Buffaloes a season ago. So hats off to Coach Prime and company for that. Some other overlooked games. We didn't talk about it on the live show, but Texas Tech did knock off Arizona State 30-22. Big get right game for Texas Tech, both offensively and defensively. They did just enough to contain that Arizona State rushing attack and really play from ahead. That was the key for me for Texas Tech is playing from ahead, not letting Arizona State control the clock, control the mindset of that game.
Right.
It's really good to get that conference win for Texas Tech and hopefully get things turned around up there in Lubbock.
Yeah, it's a good team on offense. I don't think they have a very good defense. I just looked at their numbers. Top 20 scoring offense right now and not a top 20 scoring defense, just off the very, kind of basic numbers. But yeah, getting to play your game, getting to go out there and, win a good game against a quality opponent who's looked pretty good. Definitely should be a step in the right direction for this team. Definitely should be a step in the right direction for your confidence. So something to definitely build off of if you're Texas Tech. It wasn't perfect by any means, but you can build off of it. Not a game you maybe expected to win coming into it, but that definitely helps inspire some morale, maybe get your locker room moving in the right direction as well. And yeah, should be pretty fun to see where they can go from here. Maybe they can start to get the ball rolling and be the Red Raiders we thought they could be.
Maybe. Again, lots of defenses that can take advantage of in that conference. Liberty 35, East Carolina 24. This was a weird game that had a long lightning delay after 2 minutes of clock had gone by in the first quarter. Liberty keeps almost losing, and I think that's going to hurt them going forward. I really think they needed to just blow everyone out on their schedule. Not saying they're completely eliminated from college football playoff contention before September's over, but not looking good right now. It just seems like a lot of other options, and now they're going to have to hope that other teams just lose multiple games, which doesn't seem possible. And Oregon State bounced back with a 38-21 win over Purdue, mostly shouting that out so everyone knows I can, in fact, get a ledger picked correct. I got one right. Garrett, let's go to our midweek menu. And we've got a 3-pack of games, not the top 25 matchups that we've had the last couple of weeks in the midweek. So we won't spend as much time here, but to close it out, we've got a 3-pack of midweek games this week. Starts on Thursday night with Army 13.5-point favorites at Temple. Army quietly looking really solid this year. I mean, the service academies as a whole looking really solid with Navy knocking off Memphis as well and Air Force kind of doing their thing. Virginia, at Virginia Tech at Miami. Miami 19-point favorites, 6:30 p.m. Friday night on ESPN. Man, this was a game that I had circled on my calendar in the preseason. I thought this was going to be a really fun early season ACC matchup. Good barometer test for Virginia Tech, giving Miami a run for their money. But Virginia Tech, correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, they feel like a team that's not necessarily using their quarterback skill set the best way they possibly could at this point. They feel like they're trying to make Kyron Jones a little bit more of a pocket passer, maybe similar to what Arkansas did last year with KJ Jefferson. And that's just not his A game. And it's kind of hurting them so far.
Yeah. It just, to me, they feel like a team that doesn't know how to win. It feels like a team that they're better than some of the teams they played, but they just haven't been able to come out, be prepared, put the performance together where they're consistent over 60 minutes and really win a game. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe, maybe Virginia Tech fans can tell me that's a dumb take. They just don't seem like a team that really knows how to win games right now. And it's unfortunate because they have some real talent on that roster.
Yeah.
Flip that over to Miami. The unfortunate thing is Miami knows how to win. They've figured out exactly what they want to do. They are extremely lethal. Cam Ward, the resurgence in his career. He's one of my favorite storylines in all of college football. Finally turning into that quarterback we thought he maybe could have been, right? We've seen him for a while. You and Mitch were in on him real early. I think we all pretty much believed in him up at Washington State. Finally finds his way to Miami, gets a little bit extra talent around him, and man, he is taking off. single-handedly saving Mario Cristobal's job, making him look like a genius. Getting a lot of help from Damian Martinez, by the way. Damian Martinez not necessarily having to do all that much, but really, really effective. And I think had 2 or 3 scores in the last game on the goal line. So just starting to figure out his role as well. I think once they get him going, it's going to be off to the races for Miami. This Miami team, let me tell you, there's been a lot of talk about several teams this year competing for the whole thing. This Miami team is one to watch out for because they can score with the best of them. They have as explosive of an offense as you can expect. And that defense has quietly been really, really good. I know they haven't necessarily played an amazing team yet, but that defense has been quietly really good. They're, borderline top 10 in points per game. That's the 4th best scoring offense in the whole country. This is a very good Miami team who, sitting here at the end of September, I might pick to win the whole thing.
Wow. Well, Cam Ward is currently the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. If you look,
and he should be. He's been fantastic.
He's been absolutely electric so far. I like Miami in this one. I like them kind of winning going away. 19 is a big number on a Friday night in a conference game, but I'm inclined to take Miami in the points in this one. Virginia Tech showed a lot of fight coming back in that game against Rutgers. They could have rolled over and just let the Scarlet Knights run away with that one. They did not, to their credit, but whole different animal that they're going to face in Miami this week. So give me the Hurricanes and the points.
Oh, yeah.
Also on Friday night, one of the weirdest conference matchups we'll see all season. I mentioned it earlier. Washington at Rutgers. Scarlet Knights, 2.5-point favorites, 7 o'clock Friday night on Fox. Garrett, Scarlet Knights are undefeated. They have looked really good at times doing it, both offensively and defensively. Washington stubbed their toe against Wazoo, but I think better than advertised in preseason. Do you have a lean in this one?
I'm going Rutgers, man. I really like what Rutgers has. I think it's a fun team. I think Rutgers is going to win this game. I know that they're favored. I would probably take them minus the 2.5 right now. I just think this is going to be a team fired up to play this game. It's probably going to be as exciting of an atmosphere we've seen in Piscataway in a long time. And I just think it's a fun team. I'm going to roll with Rutgers in this one. They could run the ball, control the ball. Cal McManus given them better play at the quarterback position than I think we all expected.
That's true.
So let's take Rutgers on this one and let them keep rolling. And by the way, for any fans of Washington who are planning on making the drive, you may want to get going. Just looked it up to see what the driving time would be on that road trip. That is a 42-hour drive across the country. Conference realignment is goofy. I can't believe Forrest Gump ran that whole way. And I just
multiple times.
Yeah. What a champ. But yeah, what a goofy thing to put this as a conference game. 2 teams separated by a mere 42 hours on the road. So get your coffee, get rolling. It's going to take a couple of days on the road to get that one knocked out. Game doesn't start till 7 on Friday, so you got some time.
I do wonder if they're doing the equipment truck for this one, or if there's a plane situation.
That's a great question, because you'd have to also send like pads.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So
that's what I'm saying. You see the trucks on the highways all the time. Like most of the time, there is a literal equipment truck that carries all the pads and training equipment and all that stuff you see on the sidelines. It's loaded up into a semi truck. And I'm legitimately wondering. I'm going to do some research.
Are they gonna find a way to like pack up their shoulder pads nice and neat so they can bring them as a carry on or something, or what?
Might have to. I hope they all have their expanded status on whatever airline they're taking, so they get the free carry on.
Definitely.
Hope they all have their credit card. Yeah, I'm Rutgers minus 2.5 too. I really like the rushing offense, and we saw that can be a problem for Washington and stopping that with Washington State a couple weeks ago. So give me Rutgers minus 2.5 at home, running the ball really well, playing just enough defense, and being a fun little team up there in Piscataway.
Yeah.
Garrett, that'll do it for the 3 Tech Takeout this week. Make sure you join us Wednesday. You'll be in your podcast feed on Thursday, but for our preview show for week 5. And as always, our live show is Saturday night, somewhere around the time that the big games end. It'll be around the time that Georgia and Alabama are wrapping up on Saturday night. We'll be live breaking down all the week 5 action. It's going to be a great week of college football action. For Garrett Turney, I'm Trey Reeves, and we will see you guys next time.
Gracious, yeah.